Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni muli wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jadley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts, in the shadow of the Great Blue Hills. We are so delighted that you're joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please do subscribe to the show in the iHeartRadio app, on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Ning Cai. She is here to celebrate the last in her Savant Trilogy series. It's called Metamorphosis. Before we invite Ning into the studio, we want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by the books of George Neeb. Help young readers discover the past with George Neeb's picture books that bring history to life. Illustrated in the style of ancient Greek cultures, George's illustrations inspire children to learn about history in a fun and an entertaining way. Take a trip back to ancient Egypt with Pharaoh's arrow, drawn in the Egyptian style with a young girl's quest to solve her father's death. Also be sure to read the sequel, Akia's Adventure, in a Duel with a Dragon, drawn in the style of Chinese silk paintings. Readers must find the first emperor of China as he battles a powerful dragon. Check out George Neeb's engaging historical picture books and discover the past today. We love George Neeb. You got to check out his books. Great additions to any family or classroom library. We are so excited. Our guest is returning to the show to celebrate the final book in her Savant Trilogy. We're really excited to welcome back to the show the author of the brand new book, Metamorphosis, Ning Cai. Hey, Ning, how are you?
Hey, Jed. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast show again.
I'm really excited to have you on. The Savant Trilogy is wonderful. Just remind us about the first two books real quickly, please.
All right. So, Metamorphosis is the third book, the final one of the Savant Trilogy, and it begins with book one entitled Misdirection, where we see 18-year-old teenager Maxine Schooling wake up from a coma that she was stuck in for 3 years, and no one knew if she was ever going to get out of it. So she discovers that, to her horror, her entire family has been killed. So that's her little brother and her mom and her dad. And she's lost 3 years of her life because she was 15 years old when that happened. But along with this loss, she gained something, which is a very special, what we call the acquired savant syndrome. And this is actually a real life thing where someone with a head injury might suddenly become gifted with something that they weren't really good at before. So in some real life cases, we've got people who suddenly become music prodigies, virtuosos on the piano, or some become like mathematical geniuses. And for Maxine, her gift is a photographic memory. So now she uses this newfound skill, this talent that she has, to help the CID, which is the Criminal Investigation Department in Singapore. So she helps the police and her friends solve crime. So in book two, which is what we had, we talked about just not too long ago, actually. Yeah. So that was Misdirection. So in book two, we were introduced to more characters. We've got hackers, we've got hypnotherapists, we had like scientists, mad scientists. And so she goes through a journey where she meets people from her parents' past, and she finds out more about what her mom and dad used to do, and possibly why her family was targeted and attacked. And she inches closer to revealing or finding out the identity of the killer, entitled The Man in the Mask, from her memories. And it comes to a close in book three, where in Metamorphosis, she finally completes what we call the hero's journey, and she finds the truth.
Exciting. This is a really exciting series. As you're just reflecting back and reminding us that the story starts with Maxine coming out of a 3-year coma, I can't imagine what that would be like. It was difficult enough to be 15 and then, and then grow into an 18-year-old, but I can't imagine, going from 15 and then waking up as an 18-year-old. That would be mind-boggling.
You're right. And that's why we talked a lot about, puberty, the changes that a young person goes through, not just the physical stuff, but also the mental stuff. And, in fact, a lot about mental health is also covered in the narrative arc, because it's just really important, in this day and age, especially. And more so for a teenager who has been in a coma, coming out of it and realizing that she's now an orphan.
Yeah, so much, very much going on there. And I'm really happy that you're able to talk about mental health and the importance of caring for yourself within the story, because I think it's, kids can hear that message over and over again, but sometimes hearing the message, it sounds like a lecture and it goes in one ear and out the other. But when it's included as part of a story with characters that kids have grown to love and care about, I think it makes more of an impression and hopefully will help them take action.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of young readers these days, they face a lot of stress. Thanks to COVID, now everything's online, and that brings across a lot of different issues and challenges. So, I just want young readers to know that they are not alone in it. And, if a character like Maxine Schooling can triumph over her challenges, so can you.
Yeah, certainly. Because I think most teenagers don't have to deal with the challenge of being in a coma and then waking up to find that your family had been murdered.
Oh dear. Yes. Yes, probably not.
People listening, they might be pick up on the fact that, your 3 books, Misdirection, Manipulation, Metamorphosis, there's a common thread. And if people don't know you, they may not know that in a former life, you were a world-renowned magician.
That's very perceptive of you. Yes, the titles start with M, and yes, all 3 titles also have elements of magic to it, and it's all planned from the start. So yeah, I had a lot of fun, thinking about, not just planning the entire narrative arc and the character development, but also the final titles for all 3 books. So yes, you're right. It's kind of like a red herring. If you know about it, you catch on it, and yeah, if you're in the know, you know.
Now, I'm always interested to talk to authors about their process. When you sat down and started writing Misdirection, did you have the entire story kind of in your mind? You knew what book 1 would lead into the story in book 2, or did the character and the story grow and surprise you as it grew?
That's a great question. When I give writing workshops, I always tell my students that there are 2 types of writers. There are the pantsers that just sit down on their pants and they just keep writing. They just go with the flow and they don't plan. And then the second type of writer is what we call the plotter. And plotters plan a lot. So I kind of fall in the second category, which is quite similar to how I used to perform my magic in the past, like you mentioned. For stuff that you see me do on stage, even on TV, it's been scripted and rehearsed before it's been presented. But of course, when you pull out someone from the audience, you kind of go with the flow with how they react, and you do a bit of improv in that sense. Likewise, so for writing all 3 books, I already had a plan. I think you can call it a roadmap for how the trilogy would go, specifically how each book would have its arc and how it ends with a cliffhanger before it comes to an end for book 3. But of course, along the way, even though you kind of play God as a writer, your characters have their own lives and, sometimes they have their own agency and the next thing you know, it's like, hey, that's not according to plan. So yes, things change, love interests change, certain aspects as well shift, according, to narrative. But, I always feel like you need to be flexible as a writer, as a creative person. So you kind of have a framework, but it's okay to kind of let loose a little bit and see how it goes and then, follow to what is, the most authentic version of the story.
Yeah. As you were referring back to your stage career, I, am familiar with the fact that you performed a lot of, death-defying illusions on stage, and you certainly have, you don't improv.
No. Yeah, you're right. These things are, especially the more dangerous, the more high profile it is, especially when you're, performing in front of thousands of people, nothing can go wrong. So we have got a whole team of people. It's not just me on stage, but, everyone has their place, a role to their own, responsibilities and roles. It's kind of like how, when a stage performance rolls out, you have people working, behind the scenes, and it's not just the thespians or the director or the music and stuff. So, it's kind of like, how I approach my writing. I plan out everything, so everything's all scripted, but then I also kind of, give a little leeway, of improv in that sense, where, I allow the characters to breathe and make decisions, and I listen to how, they want their lives to be, and I kind of act like a medium, and I channel through that energy and, birth the book.
Yeah. You've kind of gone through a metamorphosis, going from being on stage, working with a big team, working with a partner, and getting that instant response from an audience, and now you've transformed into an author, and being an author is kind of a solitary thing. You're certainly still working with a team of editors and publishers and publicists and whatnot, but the day-to-day grind is you and the paper, and you don't get that instant response from the audience, and in most cases you don't even see the audience of your books. How has that transition been for you?
It's been interesting, but magic is all about communication, and so is writing. And in this day and age, we have social media, so it's been wonderful when I get feedback from people, and I also have young readers, having their parents email me or sending me messages through Facebook and other social media, where the kids just kind of ask, is the killer so and so? I'm guessing it is, because in book 2 there is this scene where they blah blah blah, and it's just so endearing because as a writer you kind of sprinkle breadcrumbs and sometimes little red herrings, where you kind of want people to kind of it's like misdirection. So it's just lovely when you see young readers so wrapped up in it, and it makes them think, and it challenges them and makes them creative in their own ways. Some people want to write their own story, which is wonderful, because they're inspired after reading it.
Yeah. It's great that you're able to hear from your audience and from their parents. That must be a lot of fun. I bet you a lot of the messages start with, "My kid is driving me crazy. He thinks this."
Well, in a sense, I have a lot of parents letting me know that they couldn't wait for the sequel to come out, because with COVID, a lot of things got delayed, and I was informed by my publishers that a lot of their plans got derailed because of the pandemic. So my books and other titles were affected. But I totally understood where they're coming from. And so I kind of had to explain to readers who were trying to be patient about it. So I'm just really glad that, yeah, all 3 books are out, and it's been such a wonderful journey because the first book actually came out in 2018, and the original manuscript for it was actually submitted for a competition in 2016 before I was like longlisted and I was awarded like a 3-book contract.
And you also began writing the book, and the first book came out long before you became a mom. How did becoming a mom change you as an author?
Oh man, wow, I never understood what they meant by the old saying, it takes a village to raise a child, until I became a parent. So I used to tell people that, writing is easy. You just have to like be disciplined and make time for it. But gosh, once you become like a parent, especially now with our son, he's just entered his terrible twos. And wow, it's such a challenge. So I tried really hard to stick to what had worked for me, but I found it actually quite impossible because it was just hard. Mm-hmm. There's no other way of saying it. But once he went to bed and I had a little bit of time, and even though I was just so knackered, so tired, so exhausted, I just had to make time, and create the opportunity to be able to sit down and bang out a couple of pages. So what I did was actually kind of come up with a schedule for myself. Mm-hmm. Where I had a deadline because that was really clearly communicated by my editor. And I just had to work backwards and make sure that I hit the minimum number of words every day. And then some days if I fall below that, I just have to make up for the next day. And so with that, strict timetable, I was able to finish the final draft. And so it's not easy, but it can be done.
Yeah, absolutely. Where is Ning Cai going next with her writing?
Wow. Okay. So, it's a bit different, but I've been writing poetry. Yeah. So it's a bit different from what I'm used to doing. I mean, I've got 7 books out and they've been fiction and nonfiction. So now, the next thing that's going to be published is actually a poem that I wrote. So that'll be published, in the collection of basically I'm one of the contributors of a book that will be published by Marshall Cavendish, early next year. So I'm looking forward to that. And I guess, if I get good feedback, then maybe I guess I will continue more with poetry, because it's such a different art from writing prose. And I'm really enjoying the challenge.
Yeah. That's one of the things that I think defines you, that word challenge. There's so many people who work their whole lives to get to the top of their field, and you rose to the top of your field in magic, and then you kind of said, all right, done that. Let me do something different. And, you wrote this wonderful trilogy for middle grade readers, and it's successful and people love it. And I'm not saying you're walking away from that, but it's like, I did that. Let me find something else that might be hard for me.
I'm just inspired by writers like Neil Gaiman. He doesn't pigeonhole himself in just one specific genre. Mm-hmm. I mean, everyone knows him for Sandman, and Sandman was like 30 years ago, I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah, when it first came out, right, in the 70s or 80s, and it finished in the 90s. So now, it's coming to Netflix next year. But through that, he's been writing books for kids. He's been doing all sorts of different creative projects. So I feel like I don't just define myself as Ning is a magician, full stop. I think it's I'm an evolving human being, mm-hmm. and I'm just a creative being, a person who enjoys creative endeavors, and it can come in all sorts. And I'm just, really relishing all that.
Well, that's really wonderful. I tip my hat to you. As you know, in the magic world, there are so many magicians who kind of get their act and then they just do it for the next 30 or 40 years. They don't even change their headshot.
Well, I think, everyone works differently, and those, I was never one of those magicians that only did like one kind of variety act. For me, I always believed in doing a show. So it's a very different kind of business model, I think. Yeah.
As a mom of a little boy who is just getting into books, and we're really happy. I just saw a picture of Ning's boy reading a book. So I know that Ning is reading to him and is helping him develop a love of reading. Any thoughts of perhaps writing a picture book for the kids the same age as your son?
Are you a mentalist? You must be a mind reader of some sort. Yes. I can't get into details, but yes, that's kind of in the plans. So I think maybe the next time we talk will be on that project.
Well, we would be happy to talk to you about that. And I'm not really a mentalist. I pretend to be one on stage sometimes. Hey, tell me, I'm really curious, does your son have a favorite book, or is there a book that you really love reading to your son?
Well, he has, of course, we're here in Switzerland, so he goes to a crèche that's like kind of bilingual, English and French, but they speak mostly French. So currently his favorite word is alors and la, which means here. And but for English words, he would use it for food. So he would like say banana. So food is always in English. Other words are in French. But for books, he really enjoys Chica Chica Boom Boom.
Ah, classic.
Yeah, exactly. So he would always like bring it over to me and have me like read it like a rat, and he enjoys it.
Awesome. Hey, you mentioned Netflix earlier and Sandman coming out on Netflix. One of the things that I've just I have little patience right now, and I love finding a series that's out there so that I can just sit down and watch episode 1 and just binge through and go through to the end, and I don't have to wait. And I know a lot of people are really excited now that the Savant Trilogy is out there. And if they haven't started already, they can sit down with book 1, Misdirection, and just go on through manipulation to Metamorphosis and read just binge on this great trilogy. So, Ning, tell everybody where they can go to find out more about you and find out more about the Savant Trilogy.
Thank you. So yeah, you can check out my website. That's ningthing.com. That's my name, NINGTHING.com. And you can find out about my books from my publisher, Epigram. That's epigram.sg, and the rest of my books from Marshall Cavendish, International Asia. So in Singapore, we don't have like book agents. That's kind of like a different, I guess in the US, that's the usual style of doing stuff in the literary industry. So yeah, I just work with them directly.
Wow, that's great. You don't have to go from publisher to publisher. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm just happy working with them. So it's been, I've been in this since 2011. Oh gosh, it's been 10 years. Exactly. So yeah, and I still see myself doing this, to continue doing this in the future.
Awesome. Well, we can't wait. We can't wait for that picture book that might be coming. We don't want to spoil anything, and we can't wait. We can't wait for our next visit with our friend Ning Cai. Ning, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me again.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Louise Chadbourne. She'll be here to celebrate Granite, the Bull Mastiff story. That's the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Hey, we would love for you to connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram, at Jedley Magic on Twitter. We also have a fantastic website, readingwithyourkids.com. Now, if you are a parent or a teacher, you absolutely want to go to our website so you can sign up for our free newsletter. And also check out our Certified Great Read Wall of Fame. Discover the next great addition to your family library. If you're an author, you absolutely want to go to the website, readingwithyourkids.com, and be sure to click on the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page. You'll scroll on down to find out how you can be a guest on the show, how you can submit your book to our Certified Great Read program, and also find out about our really exciting monthly promotion program that will celebrate your book here in the podcast with commercials, messages to our 66,000 social media followers, and also have your book displayed on our nationwide network of digital pedestrian billboards. Folks in Boston, Atlanta, Albany, New York, Toledo, Ohio, Los Angeles, Sacramento, California will all have a chance to see your book promoted up on not a big, huge highway billboard, but a really big pedestrian billboard. Learn all about it at readingwithyourkids.com. Want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, want to start by thanking our guest, Ning Cai. Be sure to check out Metamorphosis in the entire Savant Trilogy. Also want to thank our sponsor, George Neeb. George Neeb, his books are so unique and so much fun. What a fun way to get your kids interested in history. Also want to thank my team, Alejandro Gardy, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, our brand new intern from Emerson College, Skylar Strauss. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, I want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.